This is actually the video that I've needed to do for a long, long time. And it's the one video I have not wanted to do. If you know anything about me, if you know my work with arousedwomanblog.com, if you know what's important to me, then you know that I try to face things head on. And I try to deal with things as they come, mostly. One of the things I could not deal with and did not have the skills to deal with many years ago was just how unhappy I was. I was not living the life that I had wanted. I was not living to my potential. I wasn't doing anything that I cared about. The only thing that I cared about at that time, in terms of what I actually was able to do and put energy toward, and that was raising my daughter. But everything else that I had known and loved and done, I wasn't doing that anymore. It just wasn't possible. And because of that, I became very, very unhappy. To back up just a little bit, I started in the performing arts when I was 2 years old. Two. By the time I had my daughter, when I was 25, nearly 26 years old, I had been active in the performing arts for 23 years. And I had to stop pursuing a professional career when I found out I was pregnant, because, they're not going to hire pregnant chicks, right? Because, it's a liability insurance thing. I get it. But what it meant was that I was suddenly not doing anything in the arts. Even when I wasn't performing in years prior to that, I was working with ballet companies. I was working with international ballet competitions. I was still involved in the arts. And it was a way for me to still participate. And I love ballet. Ballet was my first love. So, I'll never be a ballerina, but, so being able to help out in that way was great for me when I couldn't or didn't want to perform. But when I became pregnant and couldn't perform and couldn't travel and all that jazz, and I was setting up to be a mother, which is something that I had never seen for me in my life. And this goes back to issues with my own mother, who was just an evil, and I don't say the word bitch, I don't like the word bitch, but my mother truly was an evil bitch. She was physically and emotionally and psychologically abusive. And it was just really, really difficult growing up. And so because of that, I knew I never wanted to have kids. I never wanted to be married, because I knew I would be an awful mother. I wanted to be on Broadway anyway. I wanted to do Broadway tours, and you can't have a little kid, trotting along with you. But when I did learn that I was pregnant with my daughter, I knew I loved her instantly, and I knew that my life was changed. And so the thing is that I did not have a support system, and I did not have the skill set to deal with this kind of huge change in my life. I mean, you don't go from doing something you love, eat, sleep, breathe, this thing you love for 23 years and then just stop it and be okay with it. That it doesn't work like that. But that is what was expected of me by my then fiance. And he didn't understand how I was not truly happy. And I had no female role models in my life. I've never been close to women. Women have never liked me. For some reason, women get the idea in their head that I'm after their man. I don't want your man. Keep your man. And I don't want, I don't do that. But women tend to assume that I'm like that. And um, the interesting thing is that as a kid, and I know I'm jumping around, I'm in stream of consciousness right now, but I'm trying to make it all fit down the road. Um, as a kid, I was never popular. I looked weird. I was made fun of because of my fair skin, my freckles, the gap in my teeth, my weird eye color, my weird hair color. I was just ridiculed. I was shamed every single day, to the point of I would get in fights on the playground. It would literally get to fist fights because of my coloring and how I just am weird looking. And so when I hit puberty when I was 10, I developed breasts, like literally overnight, C cup breasts, and within a week or two, I was a double D. And so that ostracized me even more, except that the boys who before I was just the weird, ugly kid, now I was fat, weird, ugly kid. And my name, Patricia, um, became Fat Pat or Fatty Patty. And it was soul crushing, really, at 10 years old to not know what was going on with my body. There was no talk about puberty. My mother was not that kind of loving person to tell me about the changes of life. I just knew that every day at school was an emotional hell, and then at home was an emotional hell, a physically abusive hell, often. And my mother's issues go back to her childhood and her mother. So I knew there were issues with that. But for me to be a perfectly healthy kid of 10 years old, starting puberty with a muscular build, and then adding breasts and hips onto that, to be ridiculed on a daily basis, that got into, fist fights at recess. It was traumatic. And the interesting thing is that, like, the boys wanted nothing to do with me, but their fathers did. And so, right around the age of 11 or 12, it really got obvious that men liked me, but boys didn't. And men got really creepy. And I have had issues of dealing with men simply because men scared me. I didn't like the way they looked at me. They were lecherous, lascivious, and some other $5 words. But it was actually really scary at times. But anyway, so that was my background. I have never ever really belonged to any group. Any group that I've been involved with, I've never really been part of the clique. I've always been an outsider. I've always been a lone wolf. I've always been the person not really wanted, mostly tolerated. And so when it came time for me to give birth and have my daughter, I didn't really have anyone that I could look to, talk to, call up, email and say, hey, what the hell do I do? I love my child. I don't want to break this. I don't want to screw this up. So those first 6 months after I had my daughter were horrible for me emotionally. My fiance worked full time. I was a stay-at-home mom. And because I felt guilty that I wasn't bringing in money to the household, I tried not to ask him to help with anything. He worked, he came home, he slept, and went back to work. I was doing the feedings, of course, breastfeeding, laundry and cooking and all that stuff. And I've tried to do everything myself without complaint. And long story, not so short. I was so unhappy. I was so overstressed. I turned to food to deal with my emotions, just as my mother did and her mother did. I turned to food to deal with the things that I simply did not have the resources and skill sets to deal with. When I felt so frustrated and like I was at my wit's end, and I needed to make sure I didn't take it out on my daughter, you know. But when I felt that, eating food made me feel like I was in control. It gave me this feeling that I was in control of something, when everything else felt like everything else was completely out of control, and I had no control over that. And the reason why that's important is because of my background in musical theater. In musical theater, and I did competitions. State competitions, SCTC, even went to international competition in South Korea. And I've worked with the International Ballet Competition here in the United States now 5 times. The last time I was the assistant production stage manager of the whole thing. And, there's every part of that is about control. It's about knowing the choices that you're going to make and sticking to them, and you don't deviate, because if you change a choice in the middle, it's like changing a horse in mid-race. It just can spell disaster. And so being in that situation as a new mom with no support network and no just being alone, surrounded by people, but alone, I turned to food. And the food either made me feel like I was in control of something when everything else was out of control, or if I felt that emptiness and despair and God, I hate my life, this is what I never wanted, in terms of I never wanted to be settled. I never wanted to be still. That's just not me. And I didn't know how to deal with all of that while trying to be a good mom. And I didn't want my daughter to suffer, but I still felt this emptiness, this deep, deep emptiness that seemed bottomless at times. And the quickest way to get over that feeling was like eating a whole pan of brownies just out of the oven. A pan of warm fudgy brownies made everything feel a lot better really quickly. Whether it was the chocolate and that affecting hormones, I don't know. Just the sugar high, I don't know. I'm not looking too far into the technical components of brownies, but it was when you feel empty and cold, yeah, warm brownies hit the spot. And so over 6 months, I gained over 100 pounds. And I remember taking photos, family photos, at the holidays, because my daughter's born in July. 4th of July, baby that she is, we were taking photos that December at the holidays, and I saw myself in one of the photos, and I did not recognize myself. Having grown up being ridiculed and getting in fights because of people calling me fat, my peers at school calling me fat. Now I really was fat. And the thing is that what I started to realize is that men no longer bothered me. If you have read my article on my website, it's called Me, My Breast, and I. If you've read that, then you understand, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read it, maybe you would like to just go to my website. It's trishcausey.com/me-my-breast-and I. It's hyphenated. Anyway, yeah. It explains just some of the sexual trauma that I have experienced. And I have been attacked more times than I can remember, mainly because of my breast, and my hair. Men seem to like my hair. Um, the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit did not help situation at all. But there have been some men. So please, if you're a men's rights activist, please know I am prefacing this with the hashtag of not all men. But there are some men who think they can just grab a woman, attack a woman, just because they want to, just because they want to feel her up. And I experienced that many, many times. Pushed into stairwells, uh, pushed into janitor's closets, pushed down into the corner of a room, as a man got his group on, and I couldn't fight or didn't know how to fight him when he seemed to suddenly have, like, 8 hands, and I didn't know what to do. Um, I've experienced a lot of sexual trauma. I was molested as a kid by a neighbor who was female, and I was raped when I was 21 in my home. That was date rape, so some people don't consider that real rape. I did not consent at all, and yeah, something that I realized there 6, 7 months after I had my daughter, when I was at my heaviest weight, was that men no longer looked at me. I wasn't getting attacked. I wasn't being shoved into corners. I wasn't getting lewd comments. And I didn't really process it at the time, but something inside me realized that being overweight was protective. I grew up being told that I was fat when I wasn't. But even though I wasn't fat, they made sure I knew that fat was ugly and fat is unwanted. And so somewhere in that of being suddenly 100 pounds overweight, I felt safe for the first time. And like, I could walk down the aisle at the grocery store and men didn't look at me anymore. They didn't notice me. And it was refreshing. I could walk down the street. I wasn't noticed. And so, having spent my whole life not really being a part of any group, this was great. For the first time, I was glad that I wasn't getting noticed. When I knew it was a problem was when I was feeling better about myself. I was feeling better about my life. I kind of had a handle on things. My daughter was maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 at that point. And I was, back at work. And so I remember I was walking down the aisle of the grocery store and I was feeling really good about myself. I don't know why, but I was. And I was walking down the aisle and I saw this guy, kind of a good looking guy, and I kind of just smiled. Nothing crazy, nothing overt. I just smiled. And I noticed that as he turned and he looked at me, he kept walking, but he kind of turned and he looked toward me. He looked right through me, like I didn't exist. Like he was like he had, Superman X-ray vision or whatever, that he was looking through me. That as an overweight, unattractive person, I just did not exist. That had made me feel safe for a couple of few years. But now it kind of pissed me off. I didn't want to be invisible. Now, by this time, I had started composing, I was writing, and I was looking toward getting some of my stuff on stage. And um, it was really a time of change for me. And I didn't like that feeling of being invisible anymore. Um, I didn't know really how I was going to lose weight, because then I was trying to lose weight and couldn't do it. Well, what happened was that in 2004, I had my musical Witch Craze that I had composed, and I was going to put it on stage or do a workshop presentation of it or something. And as soon as I made that decision, everything felt better. I felt better. And as I worked toward that, I noticed that my weight just fell off. The weight just dropped. And by July of 2005, I was back down to a size 12, 14. Had my hourglass curves. I looked great. I felt great. And I was looking forward to my workshop. I was actually, in August, I was in rehearsals with my workshop, and then Hurricane Katrina happened. Well, needless to say, I did not get my show on stage. Not to go into detail about this because this video is already getting way the hell too long. I didn't get my show on stage, and Hurricane Katrina was devastating. It was just awful. But we recovered and we went through and we rebuilt. We're still rebuilding. And then what happened was that over the course of not being able to get my show on stage, which was really important because I needed to have this this recording. I needed to make a recording of my show so that I would then have a product that I could take to producers and say, "Hi, I wrote this show. Isn't it wonderful? Don't you want to put it on stage? Please give me lots of money so that I can put my show on stage." Not having the workshop production because of Hurricane Katrina meant I didn't have that product that I could then shop around to producers. Also, because of Hurricane Katrina took out half of the homes and businesses on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. A lot of people don't even understand that Katrina directly hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And the horrible, horrible marriage that I was in, that I had been looking forward to leaving once I had this product of my show, that I could then take out into the world. I didn't have anywhere to go now. There was no place to move to. The apartment buildings were destroyed, and the ones that were still standing, families who'd lost their entire life, their home, everything they owned, were now living in motels and 1 or 2 bedroom apartments. So there was no way for me to get out. So that started a whole nother cycle of depression and binge eating, which I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing. So this went on for another few years. And in 2010, I was hired as the guide for theater on about.com. And it was a steady job every month, going to be paid. And with that, I was able to finally leave. I was able to get out of my horrible marriage that I had been in, that relationship actually since 96. It was such a relief to be free. Although I was not technically divorced yet at that time, I was at least free. But then I had the added pressure of being a single mom. And all that weight that I had lost, I had gained back and more. And I was really disappointed with myself and my life and how I didn't feel like I was a good role model for my daughter. So, around 2011, I started on a tantric path. Tantra means, it's a compound Sanskrit word, and I've done lots of videos on this on YouTube. I even have a program you can take on my website. But Tantra literally means a tool or instrument of expansion. So Tantra is not just a thing you do. Tantra is not just about sex, although it really helps sex. Tantra is actually a way of life where your experiences are about expanding your perspective, um, expanding out from where you are so that you can live the best life you can and be the best person you can and really experience all the great things there are to experience. So I started on this tantric path that was orgasmic in nature, but it turns out, like voice lessons, there are many, many life lessons in Tantra. And that's why I really love Tantra. But with the sexual awakening that came along with Tantra, I was able to experience things orgasmically, sexually, that I had never experienced before. Again, for those of you who know about my intactivism, you know I've talked about this, and that is I have never orgasmed during sex. And I always thought that there was something wrong with me. Turns out my body's just fine. I'm good. But being in, being attacked numerous times by men, being in an unhappy, miserable marriage for years, I just really didn't. I just stopped caring about that kind of thing. Although I could always orgasm on my own, orgasming during sex was just impossible. It just didn't happen. I've also, this is another part of my intactivism coming in, but only had sex with circumcised men. And one of the things that I didn't understand was that circumcised men need dry sex or friction sex. They need the friction during sex. And I always got really, really wet. Turns out I'm a natural ejaculator. I ejaculate during sex, which means I get super wet and constantly. And that was not appreciated by my cut partners. And so in this process of my tantric sexual awakening, one of the things that came about, aside from just spontaneous orgasms, anytime I want orgasms, blended orgasms, every kind of orgasm and climax you can imagine, I can do it, and it's really wonderful. The one thing that I had not yet learned to do as of about December of 2016, the one thing I hadn't been able to learn was how to female ejaculate. And at this point, I wasn't even thinking about the past experiences with men. I just knew I wanted to be able to ejaculate. It looked really cool, right? And then something happened just in the middle of a session, a tantric-based sex session, where suddenly I just started ejaculating. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I was able to do it a couple of more times over a couple of different sessions. And I realized that I could do this. This is something my body is able to do. And I realized in that moment that in terms of pleasure and sex and orgasm and climax, I can now do everything I want to do. I don't use vibrators. I can't stand vibrators. Everything that I want to experience when it comes to pleasure, I can do that. My body does that. It does all of it, even ejaculating. So for the first time in my life, as a sexual person, I didn't want for anything. I realized my body does everything that I want to do. And so the reason why I mention all of that is because I was standing in my bathroom one night, and I just gotten out of the shower. And so I'm there standing naked. And I looked at my body, as I do every time when I get out of the shower and I'm naked, right? Except for this time, I did not say, God, you're so fat, which is what I normally would say. God, you're so ugly. Damn, you're ugly and fat. Some kind of combination of that. And in that moment, it was like a switch had been flipped. I looked at my body, which was still as big as it had ever been, because I had gained all that weight back. And I just thought about the incredible pleasure that I can experience with my body. And in that moment, I felt this wash of love for my body. And I have never loved my body. I remember being 7, 8 years old not loving my body. I remember definitely being 9, 10 years old not loving my body. 11, 12 years old hating my body already. And as a teenager, I hated my body because of how men treated me because of my body. I have never loved my body, ever. But in that moment, I did. And it was so different. I started crying to feel that kind of love and acceptance for my body, as big as it was. It was such a relief to not feel hate or disgust at my body, because my fatness is not the problem. It's the symptom of the other problems. I'm the problem. I not living the life I am supposed to live, that was the problem. Surrounding myself with negative people, that was a problem. I had to make a lot of changes in order to be happy in my life. But in that moment, to feel that love for my body was so unique, because I'd never felt it before. And it was like, why do I hate my body? My body is so amazing with orgasms and all the different kinds of orgasms I can have. And now I can ejaculate too. It was just like, wow, my body is amazing. And I didn't even have that, dot, dot, dot. My body is amazing, ellipses point, ellipses point, ellipses point, but you're fat. I didn't even have that thought. It just wasn't there. And so I learned to just accept my body as it was, because my body was fat because of the choices that I had made. So I can't hate my body for being fat, because it's my fault. It's not my body's fault. But I think a lot of times when we judge ourselves, we look at our body and blame our body when, because we don't want to put the blame where it belongs. And so for me, having that moment was very powerful, and I needed that. I really needed that moment of awareness and acceptance of myself. And it was just really powerful. And what I realized was that I had stayed fat as a protective measure. I had stayed fat so that men, not only so men wouldn't attack me, but so that men wouldn't want me. Like I didn't want relationships. I don't want a relationship. I don't want that. Like right now, I don't want that. I'm good. I'm okay where I am in that regard. But now what I have had to deal with are the the effects of being overweight. I messed up my thyroid like crazy. I'm now prone to inflammation in my lower legs and my feet and ankles. I Diabetes runs in my family. So the health aspects of what I've done to my body while abusing food to deal with my emotions, and just how I couldn't fix my life to the degree that I wanted. All while trying to be a good mom, trying to provide for my daughter, and it was just too much. But I kind of got all of that straightened out, I thought. But then now it's about, now I have my body that I need to fix. And the weird thing is that I actually really love my body. I'm not as heavy now as I was at that time. In fact, I gained even more weight. Being in Los Angeles, I gained weight because of what I was going through in Los Angeles, and I haven't talked about that. But I'm losing weight, so I'm not worried about it. I'll lose weight. But the thing is that I really like the way my body feels. And I don't just mean, how I feel inside. I mean, I like how my body feels. Touching my body, I love how my body feels. I love how my breasts feel. I love how my ass feels. I love how I feel. The problem is that men don't like this. I mean, they like the breast. They like the breast being big. Yeah, they like this part. They don't like all the rest of this being big. And so now I am on a path of trying to lose weight to a weight that I'm comfortable with, because I'm not going for a number. I'm going for a size where I feel comfortable, and I'm going for a look where I feel comfortable. I want to look good. I know I don't look good. I mean, I know that. Even my big ass is okay, because now, women can have a big ass now, but only because of the African American and Latino women who have broken the white glass ceiling of media, and so now having a big butt's okay, big thighs okay. The one thing that I have that is not okay is having a big stomach and having the belly. And you can say, oh yeah, that's a goddess body. Yeah, that's fine. But I don't want to be Willendorf. That's not what I want to look like. But anyway, so now where I am is healing the physical body, because I really feel like I've gone through this healing process emotionally and psychologically. I no longer binge eat. In fact, I do one meal a day. Most days I do high fat, low carb, keto, and that's where I lose a lot of weight. Actually, in fact, I can lose so much weight so quickly on keto. I actually back off the keto, because losing weight so quickly means this bunch of estrogen is released in my body, because estrogen is stored in fat. So when those fat cells break up, it's I've noticed that it does a big release of estrogen, and then too much estrogen can cause other issues. I do progesterone. I'm sorry, I'm looking for it's like, oh, where's my progesterone? I haven't done it today. It's a little progesterone on my arm every day to help regulate my periods, because I've never had a regular period. Except for the year after I had my daughter, I had a period every 28 days. Like, I could set the clock by how regular my period was then, but otherwise I've never had a regular period. And so I'm really cognizant of how weight loss affects my hormones, especially my estrogen. And estrogen There are different types of estrogen. My mother had to have a hysterectomy when she was 40. I think she had endometriosis. My sister started having ovarian cysts when she was 15 and had to go on the pill to help regulate that. I've never been on the pill. I don't have menstrual cramps. My period starts and it ends, and 3.5 to 4 days, but it's not on a regular schedule. But I have noticed that when I do keto consistently, I can lose 10 pounds in a week on keto, like easy, with no exercise and not even thinking about it. As long as I eat a mostly keto meal, and by mostly keto, I mean like if I might have like a sweet potato, because I'm, from Mississippi, I got to have my sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes, other things like that. I don't eat pasta, I don't eat bread, I don't eat rice. So I'm okay in that regard. So if I eat starch, it's usually in the form of like a starchy vegetable, like a sweet potato. But if but losing 10 pounds in a week, that I feel good, but then I start noticing issues. Maybe my period starts sooner, even when I'm on progesterone. I did dry fasting. I did a soft dry fast the first time about a month ago. And when I posted that on Facebook, oh my God, you'd have thought like I was about to go on some mad rampage or something. People were so concerned about me doing a soft dry fast. But I was supposed to go for 48 hours. I only went 37 because in that 37 hours of a soft dry fast, I lost 12 pounds. 12 pounds in 37 hours. Now, most of that was water fluid retention that I needed to lose. However, that's still a lot of weight. That's still a lot of poundage to lose in 37 hours. I recently did, just a few days ago, I did another dry fast, a soft dry fast. I actually drank about 4 ounces of water one day and then sipped on water the next day. And I lost only a few pounds, but that's okay. I felt good. I wasn't hungry during the 48 hours. And, I know that even though I'm not losing pounds on the scale per se, I know that the process of autophagy is happening, and the way the body starts to regenerate stem cells and all of that is happening even if I don't see a big loss on the scale. I didn't dry fast to see a big loss on the scale, and I don't want a big loss on the scale because I don't want my period getting messed up. So for those of you who have been concerned about me doing the dry fast, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. But this has been a journey that I really wouldn't wish on anybody, but it's what I've been through. Overcoming the binge eating was probably the most difficult part. And doing one meal a day, OMAD, really helped with that, because I thought I was actually okay and healing from binge eating until I started doing OMAD. And the second day of OMAD, where you eat all of your calories, all your food for one day, you eat it at one meal. And I suddenly felt this panic, not really like an anxiety attack, but I just felt like this, oh my God, this is what it used to be like when I would binge eat, when I'm just like stuffing, trying to eat food as fast as I can to either feel something or to tamp down on emotions I was feeling. So it took a few days for me to get into OMAD, but I really like eating one meal a day. But what I've learned is that I don't like being fat, and I can't use fatness as a means to avoid being attacked. Because what that ultimately does is it makes me responsible for the attack, or it makes me responsible for preventing an attack. So rather than hurting myself, I step up my activism and hashtag not all men. I know you don't all do that, but some of you do. And so I need to step up my activism to educate men on how women perceive advances. The entire Me Too campaign has been really amazing. This movement, the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movements, have been really powerful for women, I feel, and for all sexual abuse survivors, male, female, um, non-binary gender, whatever, however you see yourself. But I know on a purely superficial level that my fatness is hurting me because I want to release my album. Well, nobody's going to buy an album from a fat chick, right? And I want to be able to perform and tour, and I need to be in a state of good health so that I can perform a 3-hour show again. And so I'm walking, at the gym, and working on glute exercises so I have a great butt. Because it can't just be big, it's got to be a great butt, But yeah, it's been quite the journey, and and so I wanted to talk about this tonight. And I know this has been I've been all over the place. I'm a Libra, okay? My mind, it's always going. And I'm really stream of conscious kind of person anyway. So I know this has kind of been all over the place, but it's all interconnected. What I feel now is connected to what I felt as a kid. How I'm not treated now is very directed to how I was treated as a teenager and young woman. And just trying to live my life in a way that is good and positive, and where I can feel like I belong. And I don't necessarily need to belong to a group. I don't feel that need anymore. I do feel welcomed into certain groups. I've met some amazing people along the way, in Mississippi, in New York, in Los Angeles, in New Orleans. So, so I know that I think if I were to start all of this now, I think I would definitely have a support system where I could reach out to somebody. But at the time, I didn't. And I can't undo the past, and I can't, I can't. I wish I didn't have to go through all this, but I did. And so I've learned a lot along the way, and I can only hope that I'm a better person for it. And so then the reason I'm speaking out and talking about this, which is weird, I know, because people are like, well, you stayed fat on purpose. Well, yeah, I did. Because I don't want other people to feel like they have to do the same thing. And I know that people do that. I know people who are introverts and they gain weight so that they won't be bothered by people. One of the things that was really interesting in the survey that I did for my book, Intact Men as They Were Born to Be, is the number of men who gained weight just so that they would be unattractive, so they didn't have to deal with a potential rejection because they are intact, because they still have their foreskin, they're uncircumcised. And so that was really strange. And it was something that I really connected to, because what I have seen among intact men is that they either work out a lot. This is for American men, because, being intact in America is still very taboo. It's still not common. And so intact men in America they usually have some kind of experience where they've been ridiculed as a kid, beaten up in the locker room. They're mocked by potential partners where, when they're with a woman and it gets to that part where they take down their pants and the woman's like, ooh, what is that? Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting. I'm not touching that. And it's just their foreskin. And so their life experiences, they either gain weight so that they're unattractive, so women don't want to be with them in the first place, or they go in the opposite direction and they work out like crazy and they have this really great physique to make up for being uncircumcised. And so reading these stories over and over and over again from men who've experienced such body shaming just because their bodies are whole, their penis is whole, that was really startling for me. And so it just made me want to address my own issues. If you know me well, you know some of what I've been through in the past 9 or 10 months. And let's just say I haven't been blogging as much as I normally did. I have well over 400 blog posts on my blog, which is now on my website, trishkazi.com. I put everything into one place. But I definitely wanted to get back to blogging, and I wanted to start it off with this because my blog started out with me and my journey and my experiences and how I process inner growth, how I am processing my journey as a musician, as a writer, as an artist, etc. And so I was just really surprised by how much I was affected reading all these American men's stories, and some Australian and Canadian too, in fact. So I wanted to address this because, if for no other reason, I wanted to deal with this myself. As a singer and a stage person, my process tends to be very vocal, and so just doing this is helping me. I'm very proud of myself for not crying, even though I wanted to. I have spared you that. Believe me, I have done my fair share of crying, and I'm hoping that means that I'm at a place really where I can move on, because I want love and I want happiness, but I couldn't really have that until I became truly happy with myself and started living the life that I'm supposed to live and fulfill the purpose of why I think I'm here for this lifetime. So to those of you who caught this late, I apologize that you have taken this journey through how I think. But yeah, it helps me process things, and if it helps somebody else, then awesome. That is really what I hope to do. So anyway, I know it's a Friday night and everybody said they wanted shows on a Friday night. Well, it's Friday night and there are only a few of us here, which actually makes me feel better, because then it's just like I'm talking to myself and I won't be judged by anybody because no one's watching. Yay. So I will be posting a link to this video, and I'll be writing about this on my blog, and I will be coming back doing a lot more posts more frequently on my blog. But the reason why I haven't been doing as many posts on my blog is because I really felt the need to do this, but I really didn't want to do this because it is so very personal, and it's like everything else that I do, especially on my blog. It's just very personal, and talking about things that most people don't want to talk about or address. So I am very grateful that you tuned in. If you're watching this in the replay, thank you so much for watching. And I'm going to try and, the future videos will not be such a downer as this one. So I hope that that if you're struggling with binge eating, if you're struggling as a new mom, if you're struggling with being overweight, if you're just struggling in any way, form, or fashion, I hope that you will reach out and get help. Uh, there are groups that can help you, and you don't even have to feel like you belong to ask a question to get help or to see if somebody can point you in the right direction, you know? So, all right. Well, it's been nearly an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching the replay. And as always, I love you immensely. And regardless of what you look like, you're beautiful and you are worth everything. You are worth love. You are worth happiness. You are worth success. And don't let anybody else tell you differently, because then I'll have to kick their butt. Okay? All right. I love you, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully next week. All right. Bye, y'all.